Hi, my name is Robbie Bach. I worked at Microsoft for 22 years. I was the chief Xbox officer and the founding leader of that Xbox team. Post Microsoft, I do a lot of public speaking, and I've just written my first fiction novel. And what I want to talk about today is I want to talk a little bit about creativity and what I learned about creativity in the Xbox world and how I've translated that into the rest of what I do. If you're in the video game business, you quickly learn that it's not about the hardware, it's not about the console, it's not about the controller, it's all about the games. And this idea that content is king is absolutely true. And so, what you find is that your success hinges on having the most creative, the most interesting, the most enjoyable and exciting content on your platform. In the case of Xbox, we were fortunate. We had a title at the very beginning called Halo that everybody loved. And in fact, people bought Xbox just to play Halo. And ultimately, we expanded the portfolio of games and people bought the console for other things. And now it's a huge platform with games of all different shapes and sizes and types. But this all started with Halo, and it started with the creativity of the team at Bungie Studios who created Halo. And so for me, I come from a business background. I'm a business guy. And I always thought of myself as, okay, well, they're the creative people. I'm the business person. But when I suddenly discovered in this whole process is that there's a part of me that has embedded a great deal of creativity. And so when I left Microsoft, I started to explore that creativity. I did it a little bit in public speaking. I did it a little bit in guest lecturing. Then I decided I wanted to write a book. And I wrote a nonfiction book, so maybe not quite to the creativity level yet, but the book was called Xbox Revisited, and it was a business and civic strategy book. Help people think about how do you tackle difficult problems and difficult challenges. And when I finished that book, I discovered, wow, I love to write. That was fun. And writing the writing part was great. The editing and the getting it exactly right part, the publishing part, that's sometimes not so fun. But I really love to write. And so in 2016, at the end of 2016, I sat down and I said, I want to really challenge myself. I want to take this creativity that I think I found and do something really out of the box. And I decided to write a novel. And I ultimately decided to write a thriller called The Wilkes Insurrection, which is just now coming into the market. And the way I went about that process probably is its own form of creativity. I've talked to a bunch of authors, and every one of them writes in a different way, and they approach their creativity differently. And so what I did is I started with the characters. And I wrote almost 100 pages of character sketches of 4 or 5 of the main characters. At least that's what I thought they were going to be, the main characters in the story. And so I wrote, I just write literally 100 pages without a plot, without a destination, but just what these characters are doing at a certain point in time. And then I started to see connection points, and I started to see how these characters could weave together. And then I realized that I was writing a thriller. And so I started to optimize for thriller aspects. And from that came a plot. From that came a story. From that came my first debut novel, The Wilkes Insurrection. And so for me, this creativity process starts with people and figuring out how you describe those people, how you create their motivations, how you give them a 3D nature so that they feel real. And interestingly, my main character is a biracial female. And so I am often writing from her perspective. And so the idea of being creative and writing from a woman's perspective, from a biracial woman's perspective, somebody who's in the military, that created a whole new set of places for me to explore and new ways for me to think about how to express what I thought she was feeling and experiencing. And then what you discover as you're going through this creative process is you do that for one character and say, wow, this Tamika Smith character, Major Tamika Smith is awesome. And then you realize you have 3 or 4 other characters and you have to put yourself in their perspective. And now I'm a, now I'm an anarchist who's trying to destroy the country. Now that's a different perspective, and you have to try to put yourself in that mode. And pretty soon, I'm a dark web hacker who, at the beginning, is unwittingly helping this anarchist, and then decides he wants to try to go after him. So you start to have to move your creativity around and really open yourself to experience what other people are thinking and doing. And then the really fun part is pulling that all together. How do you make the plot at every turn suspenseful? How do you enable at the end of every chapter to have people feel like they just were on the edge of a cliff and they need to turn the page and read the next chapter? And oftentimes, as an author, occasionally you get stuck. And when I got stuck, I would go for a long walk with my dog, Roscoe. And we'd walk for 4 or 5 miles, and sometimes I'd be listening to music, sometimes I'd be doing other things, sometimes I'm on a conference call or whatever. But by the end of that walk, something had clicked, and I'd come back with a new idea and a way to resolve that problem. So for me, this creative process is a journey. It started with a nonfiction strategy book. It then went to fiction. It went to characters. It then went to learning a genre. And then it came to pulling that all together into what I hope people will enjoy as a really exciting thriller. A thriller that has the dark web, it has intrigue, it has action in it, it has some political suspense, and it ultimately has a story about what's going on in our country today. So I hope people enjoy the outcome of that creativity. But I think the lesson for all of us is that whether it's by nature or nurture, we all have that creative spark inside of us. And the real challenge is, how do we bring it out, and how do we find our way to express that?